Phoenix Sky Harbor, I see at my flight, at my gate, an entire line. Most of the flight is full of migrants with these processing center bags. And the first thing that went through my head was my 2-year-old son. I said, because I know that so many of them are not properly screened medically. So I go and I ask a Delta rep, I said, oh, are these people being screened medically? That was my only concern at the time, because Delta's not going to be able to, say, oh, well, you're not here legally, whatever.
Right.
They're kind of taking orders. I was concerned, as a customer, are they screened medically? The Delta rep tells me, well, what do you care? They're people too. Would you like a mask?
Measles patient is no longer contagious, but that was not the case a few days ago. And they've identified 2 specific locations on the north side where others may have been exposed. The infection, marked by rash and fever, was diagnosed in an unidentified Chicago resident, now recovering well at home. The source of the infection unknown, but that patient had interacted with domestic and international travelers.
Measles is much more contagious than COVID-19. It's incredibly safe in terms of the vaccination.
Out of breaking news, less than a day after a measles case was reported in Chicago, we're now learning of a second case.
This time at a migrant shelter in Pilsen.
Chicago health officials now working to identify anyone who may have been exposed. Specifically Tuesday morning of last week at Swedish Hospital's Galter Pavilion, where that patient sought care. Officials say that same morning that person rode the number 92 Foster CTA bus between 9 and 11:30 a.m.
The Chicago Department of Public Health says this second case was identified in a young child at the shelter, but that child is no longer infectious. Now, as for the shelter in question, we know it's on South Halsted in Pilsen. Public health officials say they are conducting an investigation to figure out who else that child may have come in contact with while infectious. That means everyone who lives at the shelter will have to stay put until health officials figure out if they've been vaccinated against measles. Those who have can leave the shelter. Others can't until they've been screened for symptoms and offered the measles vaccine. Meantime,
This is airborne, which means it suspends in the air for multiple hours and even 2 days after that person was in the vicinity.
Rush physician Dr. Nicholas Cozy has authored papers on measles emergency room care and says this first case in a Chicago resident since 2019 is a wake-up call.
This is not a cause for panic or cause for alarm. It's called for good prevention, which is immunization.
Worst measles case reported in Chicago for the first time in 5 years. Public health officials are now warning people about a possible exposure. Anyone who may have visited Swedish Hospital in Lincoln Square or rode the CTA bus number 92 on February 27th could be at risk.
Mugo Udigwe is live in our control room this morning with what we are learning from health officials. Good morning, Mugo.
Yes, good morning to you both. As for that second case here in Chicago that was identified at the migrant shelter, we're told health officials will be there today, basically to start the screening process. And we should also mention that same shelter in Pilsen is the one where a 5-year-old boy died of sepsis back in December.
Yes! Yes! Yes!